Hi everybody, Greg Hoffman here, co-owner of Urban Pump Personal Training Studio. Let's talk a little bit about fasting. It's pretty popular these days, so I think we need to address it. The question is, in my opinion, is to fast or not to fast. Is it something that we can do? Is it something we should do? Is it something good for the body or is it bad for the body? For the longest time, I've been a big fan of fasting and intermittent fasting for fat loss and anti-aging, slowing down the aging process of the body. But lately there's some other research coming out that's saying fasting really isn't all that great to do because it does age the body and you can lose too much muscle mass. So where's the truth in all of that, and is it something that we can use? First of all, let me talk about the benefits of fasting and what the research has said about that. One of the things about fasting that I like is that by skipping a meal from time to time, or certainly at the very least not snacking in between the meals, it allows the body to let the insulin levels drop because it's no longer having to process all the glucose from the food that you're eating. And when that insulin level drops, you get more into a fat burning mode instead of a fat storage mode. Think about it this way, you really cannot get into fat burning mode if the insulin levels are always up, if you're always eating, and if the glucose levels in the blood is always high. The body's going to burn that sugar first. So there's no way you can really get, or let me say it better, it's very difficult to get into your fat stores if the insulin levels are high. We know this, research has backed this up. So if you eat frequently, even if it's a low carbohydrate meal, you still raise those insulin levels. So in my opinion, fasting is very good at that. It drops those insulin levels. It does have to help the body to tap into the fat stores. The other thing that has been remarkable about fasting as far as anti-aging is concerned is that it allows the body to go through a stage called autophagy. And what this means is that when the body is low on nutrients that it needs, specifically in this case protein, if the body's not getting enough protein, what the body will do is it will tear down the cells that are not functioning very well, break it back down to their original amino acids and use those amino acids to build new cells. This is known as autophagy. And this is something that I find very interesting and fascinating because what it could possibly be doing is taking those cells that could potentially be malignant, cancerous, breaking them down before they become a problem, and then using those amino acids to build new cells. That's one of the things that I really liked about intermittent fasting, or fasting in general. Valter Longo has done extensive research about slowing down the aging process and fasting and the various fasting protocols. That's his expertise. If you want to find out more about him, look him up. His name, once again, is Valter Longo. Valterlongo. He's from Italy. He's big into that. Now, there are some proponents that saying that fasting is not a good idea. Two of them in particular. One of them is Dr. Mercola, who changed his stance. He used to be a big ketogenic, intermittent fasting protocol kind of guy. He's changed his tune quite a bit as of late because he's talking to other bioenergetic researchers and finding out that that really isn't optimal. The other person that has changed his tune is Peter Attia. Peter Attia is a big health and longevity doctor, does a lot of research in that department, somebody I respect quite highly. He used to do a lot of fasting, was big into that, and the whole low carb thing. He's changed his stance too. And the reason why he's changed his stance is because he used to be very aggressive with his fasting protocols. He would do a week fast once every 2 or 3 months, and then he would also do 24-hour fast with fair frequency in between those times. So he did a lot of fasting. He found when he did his DEXA scans that he lost a fair amount of muscle mass. He lost about 10 pounds of muscle, he said. Now, I don't know if that's possible because he'd be damn weak if he lost 10 pounds of muscle. But still, no doubt in my mind, he's lost a fair amount from doing that because the DEXA scans was reporting that to a certain degree. The other thing that he lost was bone density and some of the other things that were very important. He also found that out with other clients that he had on a intermittent fasting and low carb protocol. He just found the DEXA scans were going the wrong way. So he tended to want to bump the carbohydrates, stop the intermittent fasting, and he's big into bumping the protein intake. So we've got these two guys that used to be fasting proponents that switched their stance, and then we still got Walter Longo, who's still into fasting as far as aging or anti-aging and slowing down the aging process, so on and so forth. So what does that mean? Where do we stand? Is there some value in fasting or not? It does beg that question. Well, my stance on it, from reading both sides of the, or seeing both sides of the coin on this, is I do think that fasting does play a role, but I think it needs to be tempered with moderation, and I think it needs to be strategic in your planning of using it. For example, like, I'm not sold on doing 24-hour fasts or doing week-long fasts once every 6 months or so. I'm just, with the experience that both Peter Attia had and Dr. Mercola had on that front, I think that's just too much. It puts the body in a state of survival, and when it does that, it slows down the metabolism and a lot of these other processes, and that's what Dr. Mercola noticed from doing it himself. And so he and Peter are on the same page with that. And I agree, I just think that's too much. But I do think we need some intermittent fasting, and at the very least, we do need to skip meals from time to time and stop snacking all day long. Because there's absolutely no way, and once again, the research really is clear about this, there's no way that you can get the insulin levels down and under control if you're eating all day. The insulin levels stay up. That encourages the body to do fat storage instead of fat burning, so it makes it very difficult for you to tap into your fat stores and use that for fuel. Another thing that both sides say about this is that, let's talk about the ketogenic side. They're big in going low carb so that the body can become more sensitive to insulin and it can respond to that better. And that if you eat too many carbohydrates, it tends to get insensitive to insulin, not able to respond as it should. So it makes the metabolic switch very inflexible. And so they say you got to go low carb to get the body more sensitive to insulin. And there's truth to that. But I also find by listening to Peter Attia and Dr. Mercola on being too ketogenic that it can get stuck in that way too. So it makes it difficult for the body to turn from a sugar burning machine to a fat burning machine, back to a sugar burning machine, back to a fat burning machine, and make that transition as smooth and fluid as possible if you're stuck to one side over the other too much. I didn't know this. I always thought that the big problem we have, and I still think it is, that most people tend to be insulin insensitive because they eat way too many carbohydrates, have done them for way too long, and the body is insensitive to that. I never gave it any thought that the body could get metabolically inflexible from being on a ketogenic diet too. But apparently that happens. So I think it's important that we have carbohydrates, that we do some intermittent fasting, but that we do feast as well too, and we balance those things out. So as far as my regimen is, if I want to add a little bit more thickness to my muscles, for example, I tend to eat more carbohydrates. I'll eat more rice, I'll eat more potatoes for my meals. I'll add my total caloric intake, probably 300 to 500 calories a day, and it works. Man, my muscles get fuller and thicker, and my energy level's a little bit better, and my strength actually is a little bit better than when I go full-on ketogenic. Now, if I go full-on ketogenic, I find that the fat loss just strips right off. I mean, my cuts come out really pretty quickly. So I like bouncing back and forth between the two. And I think that in my situation, like if I go carbohydrate heavy for a couple weeks, then it may behoove me to go carbohydrate light for the next week or so. Because one thing I do notice is that if I'm on a ketogenic diet for a while, my strength gains are still fine. My energy levels are still fine. But I think if I stay on that too long, then I start losing a little bit of that strength. So that's how I use it. Now, as far as intermittent fasting is concerned, I do that too. I still don't eat anything until about noon every day. I have my coffee in the morning. That's about it. So I still have this big window where I'm not eating much. And then I may snack during the rest of the time of the day. I love that. It works with my schedule. It works with my hunger pangs, if you will. And it just doesn't affect my energy levels too much. So I'm still a big fan of doing intermittent fasting myself every day. And then on days if I want to eat more, I just go ahead and do it. And then I get back on the intermittent fasting protocol. So to sum it up, fasting does have its place, but I think it could be overused, it could be overemphasized to where you could see detrimental effects from it. But on the flip side, I think that you can also still overeat, eat too many carbohydrates if you're not careful with that too. So let's just go back to what our parents used to say. I remember my mom back in the day, and this was just the rule of thumb. Eat your 3 meals a day, you don't snack. That's that. And the reason for that is that it did allow the body to get its insulin levels down. You were both storing fat and then you were burning fat during the course of the day. It just made more sense. And I would add on that, skip a meal from time to time. I think if we all do that, we're all better off. In my opinion, that's how to add fasting to the way you do things. Thank you much.